When Mark Rothko died in 1970, he was widely considered one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Now, the roots of his imagination are on display, and Robert Costa is our guide.
His works are mesmerizing and recognized worldwide. Swaths of color and floating fuzzy-edged rectangles, all part of the signature vision of the formidable 20th century artist, Mark Rothko.
Well, everybody knows and loves Rothko's large abstract canvases, but very few people know that he made nearly 3,000 works on paper.
Now an exhibit at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. hopes to tell a lesser-known Rothko story, the trail of paperworks the artist left behind. Adam Greenhalgh is the curator.
We can see his sources, we can see his early ambitions, his aspirations, and the way that he understands paper to be just as significant and important as his much better known canvases.
Rothko on paper is equally as innovative, and he did not consider these to be studies or prep work.
When you look at these, they don't even seem like paper works, but this is paper.
Yes, indeed. These are mounted in the way that Rothko insisted that his classic format paintings on paper be mounted. So they're attached to either a hard board panel or linen and wrapped around a stretcher or a strainer to give them this three-dimensional presence.
Born Marcus Rothkovich in what is now Latvia, he immigrated to Portland, Oregon with his family in the early 1900s. He eventually moved to New York, working, teaching, and struggling, but also learning and evolving as an artist. Many of his early paper works echo other visionaries and hint at what was to come.
You can see the colors in the background. They remind me of a later Rothko.
I think you're right. Some of these sort of blocks of color in the background really point to the later abstractions to come.
He sort of tried to keep a 9 to 5, 9 to 6 schedule, tried to have dinner with the family every night.
Kate Rothko Prizel is the artist's daughter. She says her father was a loving, hard-working man who anchored their family. He was also intense and private, especially when painting.
I, as a smaller child, was fairly often dropped off by my mother at the studio when she needed to get something done. And it was very clear that my father did, even for me at a young age, that my father did not like to be watched painting. He would always set me up in my own corner with my own artwork, with the idea that I was going to be absorbed in my work, he was going to be absorbed in his work.
It was for him this kind of sacred, I think deeply emotional and psychological process.
Christopher Rothko is the artist's son.
To be distracted during that was something that would be really so counterproductive. So that sort of mystery carries over to his materials. He was known for making a lot of his own paints, taking ground pigments and making his own homebrew. And part of the luminescence that we see in his work is the result of him constantly experimenting, trying to come up with the right concoction. I don't think those were secrets he was particularly guarding, but it was simply part of him making something that was very, very personal.
That sense of intimacy, that emotional truth, is evident today for so many who experience Rothko's work. And with blockbuster exhibits in Paris and Washington.
Maybe you're just supposed to experience it.
And acclaim on television.
You do feel something, right? It's like looking into something very deep.
And at the auction house.
And selling at $77,500,000.
Rothko's popularity is soaring more than 50 years after his death. Christopher Rothko says his father sought to create a universal language, one that spoke to people's hearts.
I often think about going to a Rothko exhibition, and it's a great place to be alone together. Ultimately, it's a journey we all make ourselves, but so much richer when we do it in the company of others.